tutorial that I want to show you. If you have a fuel tank, or you have a friend or anybody has a fuel tank from a motorcycle or from ATV or something like that that has a problem with clogging up, and it's a steel tank, the best thing to do is to get a handful. First of all, you empty out the fuel tank, get all the fuel out of there, and you take off all the petcock and all the vacuum lines, everything. You drain all the fuel completely out of it, let it sit for a couple of days. If you have to, wash it out a little bit. But then you take a handful of these little guys here, nuts and washers, and you take them in. Here's the tank. Drop them in the tank. Okay. And once you drop them in the tank, you're going to take that tank and you're going to fill them up. Now you're going to have to do this repeatedly a few times, and when you're ready to take it out, you just use a magnet and you can take all the nuts and bolts out just like that. And along with it, when you clean it, you'll see this is debris that have gotten out of it already. What happened was somebody tried to paint the inside of the tank, and when they tried to paint the inside of the tank, they didn't prep it properly, and then they also let a big chunk of it dry right in the center. And when they did that, when it dried in the center of this one side, what it did is it bubbled, so it got it underneath it. He had the right idea, just didn't prep it properly. It takes anywhere, I would say, from 1 week to 10 days to properly prep these things, and then put the stuff in there and let it sit, and applying it correctly and easily. And you don't want to clog up any of the vacuum ports. There are vacuum ports in here. You don't want to clog any of those up, so you got to watch that. So he was having all kinds of fuel problems with it. So anyway, just remember, it takes a good week minimum to clean these out, get all the gas out of them, clean all that rust, everything out, and then that's just prepping. And then when you reline it with the coating, the gas coating, which is excellent stuff. They make really good products. When you use that, then all you've got to do is another couple of days, make sure it gets coated evenly in there. You don't want to blob it up. Plus, in the vacuum lines, let me show you something. On the vacuum, right here, let me raise the camera up a little bit. Right here you have a little vacuum that's coming out, little vacuum titty, right there. Now what I'm going to do when I start coating it, I'm going to stick something in there far enough to where when I start coating in there, it won't block it. So when I pull it back out, it'll still be able to run vacuum through there. Or the other way of doing it is when you're applying the stuff in there, use air, if you have air, and blow through there constantly. Keep that thing free, because this thing was really blocked up and he wasn't getting any vacuum to it. And what ended up happening is the bike kept on spitting and sputtering, and he thought it was the I'm sorry, this camera keeps zooming in by itself. But what ended up happening is at high speeds the bike would spit and sputter and he wasn't getting anywhere. So I rebuilt the carburetors, and there really wasn't nothing wrong with the carbs. The carbs were clean. It just they weren't getting any fuel. The fuel was stopping because of the vacuum wouldn't allow any fuel to come through. It would bubble inside there. So the way you could tell is when I went to go and lock his gas tank, it went psh on me. Really, I mean, a lot. There was a lot of vacuum brought in there. So it wasn't really allowing any fuel to go through. And if it did, it was very little. So always, if you're going to coat your tank, make sure you take off your, what I did is I took out the petcock, and on this side there was a fuel gauge, sending unit on this side. So I took that out, and like I said, I shoved the thing in here last time I did one, and make sure everything's nice and clean. So when you do these things, you got to start out with a very clean tank. So using those washers and nuts and bolts and stuff like that, washing them around there. I've been at this for 2 days now, and this is one of the pieces that broke off from the old lining. I took it out, and it was just, you know, you can see how sheeted of black stuff there. That's mold. It's been in there for quite a while, just bouncing around and coming apart. So every time a piece would come off, it would get stuck in the petcock. So anyway, this is Grandpa Ken. It's motorcycle tanks, fuel tanks for ATVs, anything that's got a steel tank, and you're going to recoat it. If you're having problems with one, that's the thing. Another thing is that if you do have problems and you think it's the carburetor and you rebuild the carburetor and you still have the same problems, or you get a brand new carburetor and you still have the same problems, your vacuum ports are clogged up. So anytime you see bubbles inside your fuel line, if you get clear fuel line and you see bubbles inside there, and you have a full tank, then you've got a vacuum problem. So make sure these vacuum ports are not clogged up. Anyway, that's Grandpa Ken. I'm out.